One of the things that I've been using it for is a couple aspects when it comes to real estate investing. First off is, like I said, when a distressed homeowner is calling in, they're usually calling in and shopping around. If somebody isn't available to answer the phone call immediately, you have essentially 5 minutes to return that call. And if you aren't able to return their call within 5 minutes, statistically, you decrease your odds by over 80% that this deal isn't going to happen. So the AI agent that I have set up in that regard is strictly to just try to have that initial conversation, collect some basic information so that the user feels like somebody's working on it to get them to stop making that next phone call. The other one that I use it for is property management.
Welcome to the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Kidd, where every week we dive deep into conversations with real estate pros, business owners, and maritime professionals about their mindset and journey to success. Please help support us on our journey and our channel by liking, subscribing, and commenting below so we can help you in your journey to success. How you doing today? Scott Kidd, the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast. I have a friend of mine, Jack Haas with RealDealCrew on today. How you doing today, Jack?
Hey, doing good, Scott. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And for people that don't really know you, please give us a little intro about yourself so people can get to know you a little better.
Well, I've been doing real estate investing in various forms for closing in on a decade now. Been hosting my own podcast for almost as long. And then, but my core business lately has been providing fractional operations for other real estate investors, especially around their lead flow.
Very nice. And how are you seeing the leads these days? Are you seeing more deal flow or less deal flow, or it's about the same that you would see this time of year?
Well, I think this, especially for wholesalers and fix and flippers, it's kind of becoming more and more of that type of buyer's market as properties continue to sit on the market for a while. Those sellers are getting kind of softened up, if you will, and a little more receptive to cash buyers and maybe some creative financing.
Yeah, I would say we're seeing the same. I'm seeing some of the same in my own market in Florida, and seeing some of the same in the commercial space with the multifamily. It seems like, at a certain point, people are looking at, hey, we're either going to have to do something or take it off the market. And you're seeing that happen. Are you seeing the same thing in the residential market?
Yeah, pretty much seeing the same thing. It's one of those things like, and we've actually kind of gotten to the habit of doing this ourselves. Like we flip houses on occasion, and if it doesn't sell immediately, we kind of take any kind of feedback and do some additional updates or repairs. But it's getting off of that, what I call the death spiral when it comes to pricing. You put it out on the market, you set your price, your aspirational price that you're hoping to get for it, and then you start doing these death by 1,000 cuts as you continue to reduce the price, and you keep reducing the price, and then it sits on the market longer and longer, and then now people start to question, well, what's wrong with this place? Are we missing something? And so we've actually found that it's best to pull it off the market for a month or something, and then launch it again as a fresh listing if we have to.
That's a great tip, actually, because then it becomes a fresh listing. It's a new listing. It gets all the new marketing on the new platform and everything else.
Right.
It's funny how it could be a great property, but if it isn't priced correctly, if people see it, they see it, oh, this has been on the market for 90, 120 days and it's done, 4 cuts. They're like, wow, this guy's desperate, and he may not be. He just may not have been exactly where he needed to be in the market at that time. And then 4 months later, that's could be kind of a completely different situation, especially with the timing of where the rates are, where people are, the time of the year. Like where's your market again?
In Fargo, North Dakota. So it's very seasonal. So, if we launch a property in the dead of winter, people aren't moving in the dead of winter around here.
No chance.
It's just not, you're not lifting that refrigerator into a 20 below degree weather. It's not happening. So yeah, we're kind of going into the spring market here now. So the market's starting to pick up a little bit.
Well, that's pretty interesting because, that's something myself in Florida I don't really think about, because it's always pretty much sunny and warm. So the only thing you have to worry about really is the rain or the hurricanes. And the hurricanes, you kind of have an idea when those were coming. But the heavy weather, the rain, that could be all the time. So you just deal with it,
Yeah. Here it'll be, we can have week-long cold snaps where it's just like we still go out and about, but you're just not doing any kind of heavy manual labor at that point, especially moving. That's just,
I would imagine
you can get some great deals at that time.
Yeah, I would think so. If you can do it and sit on it, I guess you could buy it pretty good. But I imagine, and anytime I lived where it was colder, for me, I was always very intentional about where I was going or what I was doing. And I would imagine at 20 below or what have you that you guys get, it's you really got to think about where or the reason why you're going somewhere.
Yeah, you got to be very intentional or heading to a hockey tournament.
Yeah, or doing the skiing or the ice fishing or I don't know much about winter sports, but I know you guys don't have any mountains or anything like that. It's pretty flat in Fargo, right?
It's very flat. So, it's always, the wind is constantly blowing. So, when we do have a standing temperature of 20 below and you get any kind of breeze, next thing it's a 40 below wind chill. You're freezing instantly if you're not moving. It's kind of funny because I used to manage a property in a nearby community there's a college that would be, it's less than a mile away. And most college kids during the spring, summer, fall, they would walk to class. But I had somebody from California, a mother call from California, asked me, is it the property within walking distance in winter? And I told her there is nothing in walking distance in winter because it's just so frigid and so cold that
most investors don't know where they stand. Introducing Invest with Scott Kidd. Get your personalized investment readiness score. Multifamily real estate builds wealth through cash flow. You'll receive your readiness score, a personalized strategy. Join over 500 investors. Discover if you're ready. Start your free assessment today.
You're not walking to class even if it's just a couple blocks away.
Yeah, no chance. No chance. Yeah, I mean, I know I wouldn't even think about it. I mean, I was in the coldest I've been in is probably the, Fahrenheit 0, a little bit below Boston and stuff like that, and New England. But that's a totally different mentality, and that comes to the the mindset of what you need to be to live there, and then you have to know that everything is seasonal. You know that you're not moving. And I would imagine California, because if you're from there, you're like, oh, we'll just put it on the market whenever,
right?
And they're wondering why. But once you live there, because I had a friend that lived in Montana, and he said, yeah, we have a lot of people move from California, Texas, and, Florida and all this stuff. And we'll see us here after winter.
Yeah. Yep.
If they get through one winter or two winters, then they're probably okay. But if usually the first one, I would imagine is pretty eye-opening.
Yeah. I had a buddy that was up here for a while, and every winter he'd complain, and he came up from Florida. So let's just say that within a few years he was back down there again.
I would think so. I mean, I would imagine that there's it's quite a culture shock too, and people just probably just get through it, and you probably shovel your walk and do all that stuff, and you got to do it all the time if it's snowing or what have you. And yeah, we're not used to that in Florida at all. we don't. What is this white stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what are you seeing as in your market, and do you go out into other markets in outside of Fargo, or you're only in that market specifically?
Well, Fargo itself is kind of we're on the border of Minnesota. So there's Fargo, Moorhead, and then there's these smaller communities. So when I say the Fargo Moorhead area, it kind of encompasses quite a few smaller communities. We're still, I would classify us closer to as a town over like any kind of city.
Okay.
But what I think people are usually surprised about, however, is that Fargo itself is a bit of it sounds kind of cliche at this point, kind of a Silicon Valley, if you will, because Microsoft has its second largest campus in the United States in Fargo.
Wow.
And then there's a number of other institutions like US Bank and like bigger, they have large customer service centers. So we have kind of a high percentage of customer service, professional, white collar jobs here.
Well, that's pretty interesting, because I've noticed that a lot of tech and like especially as data centers are going a lot of places where it's naturally a little bit cooler, so that maybe potentially you don't have as much cooling. But I would imagine to keep the power going, that's a whole issue too. You probably have to bury the lines and stuff like that pretty far down. You probably don't have any exposed lines anywhere. It's probably all underground. Which is probably
get below the frost line, but it's funny you bring that up, because we are actually just outside of Fargo. They're started construction on a huge data center.
Yeah, that's one of the things that keeps coming up is these data centers and stuff where it seems to be a big buzzword. A lot of people are, and I was reading where a lot of the private equity is moving towards that, and it's kind of starting to be a little scarce for other projects, which is kind of strange when you think about it. Like if there's no places for people to live, like who's going to be using all these, all this data and stuff.
Yeah, well, we were talking about our kids. Like, it's an opportunity for them, because to be direct, there is a huge shortage of electricians, plumbers, and stuff that can handle that type of infrastructure. So right now, there's quite a bit of a shortage regarding that type of talent.
Well, there's especially because I remember like when I went to high school and stuff in Texas, you always had like a work program where you went to school half day and then you went to either you did a trade or something like that. They used to have that in the high schools, but they don't seem to have that anymore. So it's not really pushed everyone to go to college. But if I tell a lot of younger people, especially since I'm on the boats and stuff, it's like if you're not really happy on the boats and you want to do something like where you're based on land and stuff, get a plumbing certificate or electrician certificate or carpentry or something, because if you can do a skilled trade, you will never be out of work. And if you can hire other people and you're good with people, you could start a multi-million-dollar company. And all you really have to do to beat everyone is show up.
That's very true. That's exactly it. And in fact, we're seeing AI becoming a more and more prominent thing, and that's the buzzword of the year. Let's see AI displace a plumber or an electrician,
until they have robots or what have you, and that's a little ways out. And even still, you're going to need someone that knows how to design and deal with the customer and figure out how to do that. And it's not only that you have to be able to show up, but you do have to answer the phone. You do have to do customer service. You can train AI to answer the phone and do all those things. But
Well, I've been deploying that. That's part of the stuff that I offer. I have an AI agent that answers phone calls for just distressed homeowners or just trying to get them to stop calling the next investor.
Wow. Yeah, and that's really something to be said about that. That's like and really what I see a lot of people say when they're saying AI and stuff in real estate or other segments, it's really just automations that they've set up. It's not really necessarily thinking for you or answering the phone or being able to think through talking to the customer. It just keeps saying stuff until, you get the right answer, or it sends enough emails that you break down and call them or what have you. But I think there's a little bit of a confusion there, but I'm seeing it more and more prevalent. Are you seeing it more and more with everything you're doing? You're seeing it become more popular, because it adds a lot more efficiency.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've been using it for is a couple aspects when it comes to real estate investing. First off is, like I said, when a distressed homeowner is calling in, they're usually calling in and shopping around. If somebody isn't available to answer the phone call immediately, you have essentially 5 minutes.
What if you could buy your first investment property in just 30 days? With a proven playbook built by a pro with 25 years in the game, it's not just possible, it's a plan. Scott Kidd's complete bundle gives you everything you need. 7 professional tools, delivered instantly. No fluff, no guesswork. Just the exact roadmap to your first property. From Yacht Captain to Managing Director of Capital Markets, Scott Kidd has navigated deals most investors only dream about. Now he's handing you his full playbook. If you're a high earner who keeps researching but never pulling the trigger, if you feel overwhelmed by the process, this was built specifically for you. Virtual walkthrough guide and the napkin deal calculator. Inside, the 30-day checklist property locator playbook. By box builder, market scorecard, agent vetting script. And right now, free bonus access to all tools, including the Portfolio Investor Clarity tool. Visit investwithscottkidd.com and get the bundle today. Your first property starts now.
5 minutes to return that call. And if you aren't able to return their call within 5 minutes, statistically, you decrease your odds by over 80% that this deal isn't going to happen. So the AI agent that I have set up in that regard is strictly to just try to have that initial conversation, collect some basic information so that the user feels like somebody's working on it to get them to stop making that next phone call. The other one that I use it for is property management. I have the AI agent trained on the lease agreement, the property details. If the person calls in and uses their cell phone number, for example, it already knows that person is either a resident or maybe an inquiry regarding what, if there's an available unit, and it will treat those people depending accordingly. So if it's an existing tenant, it can answer basic questions that it was taught on the lease agreement or what have you. It can even take a maintenance request, that type of thing. Oh, wow. And then, just those things that would typically require a person to answer. More times than not, I don't know about you, Scott, but a lot of my tenants, they prefer texting. So that an AI agent is ideal for that. It gets a text, it just responds.
It is. Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, well, it really is because, a lot of more people are doing texting because they can also track what you said and what, because phone calls, a lot of times, by the time you get off the call, if you haven't written down or taken some notes, sometimes you things get miscommunicated and stuff. Whereas if it's in the text chain, you can print it out. Now you have all these note takers and things that it can go through all your texts and kind of say, hey, what do you need to do next? And I use that quite a lot in my own, like Chat GPT or Gemini or one of those, you take some of these note takers, like from, say, this meeting, with our podcast. Hey, what's the most important points that would resonate the most with, Jack and myself? What were, the high points, low points? Next time we talk, what should we talk about? And those, I find those really good, especially when you do a lot of these GP meetings, or we do like property development meetings and stuff, because we're doing a lot of development these days. Like, what are the high points, of what we're doing? And then you can kind of look, okay, these are the 5 questions we need to solve. So it can kind of really filter out all the stuff and keep you from going down that rabbit hole and focusing on 1 or 2 problems that you think are important. But if you look at it on the big picture, oh no, I don't need to mess with that hardly at all.
Yeah. What I was going to say is the next iteration of the property management one is that I'm going to go into trial here soon to, if somebody texts or calls in regarding a maintenance request, it will then check the list of preferred vendors and then open it and contact the vendor to book it accordingly. So it'll do the coordination between the contractor, like the plumber, and the resident, get the schedules lined up and get the maintenance schedule.
No, that's great, because that, a lot of times, I've lived in apartments or rented places, and the maintenance requests are really important, especially for the resident experience. And if the resident has a great experience, they're probably going to stay a lot longer. Retention matters, and turnover is the highest loss, for most property investors, because, every day that property is not getting any rental income, that's, a minus, and to turn over that unit costs time and money. And it sometimes steamrolls. Once you get 1 moving out, the next thing you got 3 or 4 moved out. And then, you could be one of those things, especially if it takes a longer time to redo the unit.
Yep, very true. It's anything to remove the human as the bottleneck. That's kind of what I've been doing.
That's great, because I see a lot of, people saying, again, we're with AI, everything, and it's hard to look at certain things and go, oh yeah, and then you start going into all these rabbit holes of all these different things. But that's great that you're focusing on one solution at a time and doing these things and building it out pretty methodically, because it can be really tough, because I know I've gone down many a rabbit hole of things, and then you end up having a lot of different things instead of just focusing on the one thing. So that's a good tip for anybody trying to build out anything with AI. Just focus on solving one problem at a time, for sure.
Well, that's really important to bring up, because I've been working a lot on this. In fact, I've been doing a lot of agentic engineering and developing my own apps and web apps and what have you. The thing that I've definitely learned is that focus on one thing, get that dialed in and make sure that it's not going off the rails. Most people that fail when they're building anything out with AI, it's just too much all at once.
Yeah.
And then you start to wonder why it's hallucinating or why it's going off the rails. Or I was consulting somebody recently that they built an AI agent that was essentially acting as their salesperson. And it was doing this outreach to LinkedIn and email and all of this stuff. One thing leads to another. I quickly realized that they were exceeding the context window or the memory of the AI agent. So it was constantly starting over. So any kind of guardrails that they tried to apply was forgotten. AI is like a goldfish to a certain extent. If you're not within its context window, it's completely forgotten, and you're just gonna constantly have to remind it. So there's a ton of tech tips associated with how to handle that type of thing.
That is really a great tip, because if you are exceeding, it's because so to speak, bandwidth or what have you. It's just going to tap out and reset. That's a great tip because
Well, Scott, have you experienced that when you've chatted with ChatGPT or something? It might even start to like get really slow, or it'll even say you've kind of exhausted the memory of this thread. Have you ever gotten that type of message?
yeah, I have that, or it'll come up with an incomplete answer.
Yep.
Those
are all indications that you're starting to exceed the context window.
Yeah, and it's the problem is too complex. What you need to probably do is ask it to break the problem down into smaller bite sizes.
Are you investing blind? Most passive investors don't know what questions to ask, and it costs them dearly. That's why I put together 125 essential questions. The ultimate due diligence checklist for apartments, syndications, and funds. Cover every critical area: the operator's track record, the loan structure and refinancing risk, property condition and capital needs, market demographics and competition. Ask things like, how many assets have gone through a full cycle? What is the loan-to-value ratio? What is the break-even occupancy? This is the checklist sophisticated investors use, and now it's yours free. Get instant access at investwithscottkid.com interactive. Trackable, exportable to PDF. Protect your capital. Invest with confidence.
Solutions, and then go for one at a time, and then keep adding each one on to each other until it doesn't become a complex thing for it. And that's something I learned over time too, because it became something that, I thought you just ask it a question, it's going to give you, the golden answer, but it's just not that, but nor does Google or nor does anyone give you we can't really seek overly simplistic answers to complex problems. Like just doing like you're saying, getting AI to call a vendor sounds simple, but it's a lot more into it than that. You have to load in all the different vendors. You have to load in all the different type scenarios and all these different use cases so that it can figure out what, how to do. And then you have to have your operations manual. This is how we do it. This is, and then it has to learn all of that,
Well, this is one of those reasons why I told you that I do this fractional operations for other investors. One of the things that we tackle fairly early on is establishing standard operating procedures, SOPs, because that's not only important for your operations, but it's important for any kind of automation or agentic agents you're trying to place in. But before you get into any of that, Scott, I wanted to give everybody one more tip, because you were just talking about, those context windows, and you're having this conversation with AI. What I've learned is that making use of projects, whether you're in OpenAI or Claude,
mm-hmm.
when you're having a conversation and you're doing a brainstorming session, and I don't know if maybe I'm an oddball, but I get on a thought or a topic, and I'll just kind of complete that thought in that chat, in that conversation. I will then tell the AI to summarize what we just discussed as if I have to hand this over to another employee to get them up to speed quickly. And then I will even tell it, I am going to add this information or document to the project files for reference going forward. So then I have it summarize our whole thread or conversation. I turn it into a Word document, a text document, what have you. And then I will add it in the project files to be part of the persistent memory so that we don't lose any of that context with any additional threads going forward.
That's great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because then it can actually reference back to those, like, okay, that's process number 2 for calling a vendor, or, and then you have that specific, and after a while it gets very narrow in its focus, and it's able to, draw from all those different documents. And I did that, like when I was building like a pitch deck. I loaded in like a few different books and authors and said make the make this a small pitch deck based on, theirs in their wording, and explain and make a script for me so that it makes sense to me and it would be for my audience, because I would spend time talking to it and everything else. And it came up, and I said, use nautical terms and stuff because I'm on a boat or whatever. But the first probably 50 times I sounded like a pirate. He was
like, accidentally trained it on Pirates of the Caribbean or something?
Yes. I don't know what I actually trained it to do, but it was something that was pretty funny, but it was kind of a waste of time.
Yeah.
So, but
it is kind of funny how quickly it can go off the rails like that. But something like a boat, and it becomes the core piece of its context, and it just
focus right on it.
In.
And then it became like, I thought that maybe, hey, it does actually have a sense of humor, or AI has some kind of humor. But, I always think, if there is a day when they take over and feel that we're obsolete, hey, just keep us around for the sheer humor of it. We're pretty well harmless. We kept you awake, right. Kept you powered up over time. We kept you warm on those cold nights, cold on those hot nights. So, we kept you fed with your energy. So just keep us around because we are quite funny, and don't worry. You don't need to destroy us. We're pretty good at doing that ourselves.
Yeah. just give us the time, right?
Yeah, give us the time. We'll go ahead and screw it all up for you. We'll do a better job of it than you. You'll probably end it quicker, but we'll come up with some interesting ways to destroy ourselves, because we're pretty good at that. There was I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson where they were talking about aliens and stuff like that, and what if they came down here and they're living amongst us or whatever, and they've gone back, and he said, look, this obviously hasn't happened, because with all the cameras and everything, we would have gotten a picture or something of something by now. Someone that's, some kind of proof. And, they probably, if they've come here, they've looked around, they said, look, these guys are killing each other, fighting over this and that, and making no sense of this and this, these people aren't getting along with those and that, and then they're attacking these people because of this and because of their religion or this, and so they probably saw all this, went back and said, what's your report? Yeah, there's no intelligent life there. I laughed pretty hard. He was trying not to laugh when he said it, so he also has a very good sense of humor. But so what's next on the agenda after you build out this property management module?
Well, there's a couple things that I've been particularly working on, but one of the things that has gotten a lot of attention and what's gotten me pretty busy is it's called local search engine optimization. This is especially interesting for wholesalers and fix and flippers in those areas where they're doing distressed market. When it comes to AI and the way Google and everybody is indexing things now, it's not the way it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
You used to be able to just throw content on your website and rank accordingly and be found. It's just not, it doesn't work anymore. And I would imagine that there's people in your audience this is resonating with, because they have had their website for years and they're just not getting the leads or the opportunities organically like they used to. Yeah. That's because these systems, including Google, they're using different things to measure your relevancy these days. And we can go down that rabbit hole, but I'm going to tell people right now that if you don't have your Google business profile filled out and established, you better claim it today and get started.
Yeah, that's a very valid point because it's. I know that Google has the most data. I'm pretty sure they have at least access to the large amount, and it's just completely different. I've heard this from a lot of people that their website used to do really well, and then all of a sudden it's just kind of falling off as far as stuff like that, and just the way they overall track it. And I think this is very valuable, especially like wholesalers, flippers, or even just local businesses, because they don't need a nationwide reach. They just need like within 5 miles. They need to crush it within that 5 miles, let alone 2 miles, because once they can do that, they're going to have more than enough lead flow and more than enough, business from that, because there's generally more than enough. And if you can get, 5 to 10% more business, you're going to do really well.
Well, you got to think about a couple aspects of this. One of them is that how do most people look for things these days? It's usually on their phone, and it's typically typing the words "sell my house fast" or "realtor near me" or "plumber near me." It's typically that type of phrasing, and it's that local search engine optimization that you have to focus on. And to be honest, if you're not in the top 3 results when it comes to that type of search, you're essentially invisible, because that's what's displayed, whether it's Google Maps, Apple Maps, or whatever. It's typically the top 3 results. And 80% of the people will not click on the more businesses button. They will pick one of those top 3 results.
Yeah, they'll call 1, 2, and 3. The only way they do that is if they didn't get 1, 2, or 3, which chances are people are paying for that kind of market. They probably have a call service. They probably have something like that, or an AI agent or something, VA, someone that will pick up the phone, because if you answer the phone, you're ahead of 90% of the people, because I've found that, especially on the yachts, there's people that, just because it's such a small industry, a lot of people have their large customer base or a few key customers. They don't answer the phone or catch new business. But it's like, if one of these goes away, then, you see a lot of them go out of business all the time, because, once they lose a few customers, then, they're not trying to continue to build and grow new customers.
Yep. And Google, I just actually got a notification from Google just yesterday giving me a heads up, because they're changing the way they're validating businesses. And this is going to include their AI calling you on occasion, making sure that you're still in existence.
Oh.
So to stay relevant, you better be ready for some of these things that are coming.
So it's going to be checking up on you. Wow.
Checking up on you, making sure.
Just remember, AI.
This is one of yeah.
We're here to help.
We're here to help. Yeah. We're here to help.
Yeah. So you were saying
it is one of those things, though, that I don't think people really realize. And you might have heard people talk about the Google Business Profile in the past, but there are some relevant things that a person can do. Like, for example, a lot of people post to social media all the time, whether it's to Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. But most people don't realize you can also send those posts to your Google Business Profile. And that is an indicator to Google that you're active. And most of those platforms that people might be using today, like Buffer or whatever, that is sending these updates to your social media accounts, they typically do have a Google Business Profile that you can connect to and have it send it there as well.
That's good. That's good advice, because the Google profile will build your ranking and stuff for sure. Because I've known people that they just built completely on that, and they tried to get as many Google reviews as they possibly could, and they've done pretty well. Like after a year or two, I think 2 or 3 years, they have thousands of Google reviews, and after 1 year, and then it just kept building and building, because Google kept pushing them up higher because naturally it believes that they were higher, and they were just kind of an average service company. But when they answered the phone, they had a good Google profile, and they showed up. So three big tips.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty important. And when you're in that top 3 position, the second indicator is the person who has the most reviews is likely the one who gets the first call.
Yeah, that's true, because we all are in a review heavy society. Because I look at them pretty heavily, because if they have a low rating, then it's probably okay. If they got 2 stars out, 3 out of 5, and they got 10,000, they've got a lot of unhappy people, or not so satisfied. I wouldn't say unhappy. I would say not so satisfied. I would probably be in there.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny, because when as an investor, I start to look at some of these reviews a little differently, because if I'm looking for a plumber or an electrician, I want some of the best reviews. If it's a property manager, I kind of want to have like them in the middle ground, because I don't want, if they have some negative reviews from residents, it's usually a sign that the property manager is kind of sticking to the rules.
Yeah. Because, a lot of times you have to weigh the good and the bad with the property manager, because that takes a unique personality and hats off to them, because it is a thankless job. It's one of those jobs where you have to be okay with someone being upset with you all the time.
Right. So if I see a property manager with 5 stars, I'm never going to work with them, because that's not realistic. That doesn't make sense to me. But if they have a property manager with 1 star, that's too far the other way too. So like in that middle ground there.
Or some ones or whatever, they pissed a few people off, or they did really well on some people, because you can't please all the people all the time.
Exactly.
You're always going to have some not so satisfied residents, especially if you're looking at 100, 200 unit place or what have you, or they're managing 20 or 30 different places. Not everyone's going to be happy all the time. Well, this has been really great. I appreciate you coming on. If people want to find out more about all this AI stuff agentic stuff that you're building out, what's the best place for them to find you?
Well, everything is consolidated at RealDealCrew.com. There's a free assessment there associated with how mature your operations are as real estate investors, so people can freely be ready for that. Because Scott, I don't know if you get it from this show, but I can be a little blunt myself, so I've kind of had this thing. It's pretty direct and blunt at times. So if you're not ready to see it warts and all, you be warned that assessment is going to be like that.
If you have thin skin, you probably shouldn't click. Yeah.
But then on the other hand too, I've been offering, if people would like to take a look at their local search engine optimization and how that can be improved, we can do an assessment associated with that as well. But that would be, you'd need to reach out to me on that. But you can just fill that as a contact on the contact form on that site, RealDealCrew.com.
Well, that's a very specific oriented task or whatever. Yeah, that would definitely, because each business is going to be quite unique. So that's going to take a little more time for an assessment, I would imagine.
Yeah, I have software that will let me generate a heat map on search terms, and then we can see how you rank against your competitors. And it's kind of neat to just have that visual aid.
Oh, that's very good. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and it's been really great seeing all these integrations and talking about AI and how it can really be helpful to a lot of people. Feel free to reach out to Jack, because you could really be missing a few things that could really optimize what you're doing in your business.
I appreciate your time, Scott. Look forward to having you back on my show. It's going to be a great conversation.
I look forward to that as well. So, once again, thank you so much for coming.
Have a great one.
All right, and this is Scott Kidd, the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast, and I just want to thank you guys, and always remember, as a reminder, the best investment you can make is the one you make in yourself, so invest heavily in you. See you next time.